guys, what's up? Ghost16 Reaper here, Task Force 83. So today we're going to be talking about my loadout, and not just specifically mine, but also the basic loadouts of Task Force 83. Now, this loadout that I'm going to be talking about today is my primary direct action kit. That's going to be the loadout that you guys are mostly going to see me wearing. You know, my JPC, multicam stuff, helmet, all of that. Now, eventually, I'm going to end up doing a loadout on my embedded kit, which is going to be the embedded kit essentially serves as more of a PMC style look, but that's not what we're talking about today. The direct action kit is, you know, mostly what you're going to see a lot of players wearing. It's just our term for, you know, full multicam, just a full loadout. That's really all it is for us. Now, watching this video, I don't want you guys to go through and look at this and think that the gear is going to make you a better player, because I promise you that it won't. When you're looking at this, I want you guys to look at why I'm, you know, implementing certain things into my kit, because I will be talking about all the nuances and my thought processes behind setting up certain things like my helmet, plate carrier, and things like that. So, with that being said, please, I beg of you, do not look at this video and think that, oh, I'm gonna buy all of that guy's kit because it looks cool. Yeah, looking cool is fine, but it's not really going to do you any good when you don't know the kit and you don't know, how to use it. You know, when you do get your gear, train in it. Make sure that you know where everything is. You know, I always say to my guys and to others that if you have gear and you're not training in it, that's like buying a suit or a dress and not making sure that it fits properly. So by the time that you do need it, by the time that you do need to wear it, you know, you're going to be woefully underprepared and you're going to look stupid because you weren't, you didn't make sure that it worked properly. Same thing goes for, plate carriers and stuff like that, not just suits and dresses. So, first off, we are going to go through and we are going to, go from head level down. So head, plate carrier, pants, shirt, guns. So if you are just here for the guns, you might have to wait for a little bit. You might have to skip around for a tad. But I do hope that you tune in for the entire video. So without further ado, let's get started on the head setup. Alright, so helmet setup. Now, you guys have all seen it. It's just a basic helmet setup. Right now I don't have my nods on it, but so to start, the basis of this helmet is your basic $40 Emerson Fast helmet. This one is the base jump version, with a 1-Tigers helmet cover, Drift Innovation Ghost camera, FMA Manta strobe, GPNVG dummy battery pack back here, and Emerson gear counterweight pouch. And on the arc rail adapters here, you'll see that I've got my replica Comtac 3s from Evolution Gear. Now, I've seen a lot of guys say, some people have said in the MagFit community that, oh, you don't need a helmet. Well, me personally, I don't like getting shot in the back of the head, or in the head in general. So if I am going to be playing a sport, where I'm going to be getting shot in the head, or I'm going to be getting shot at, I'm going to want to have decent head protection. Now, obviously, that's not the only thing that I use. That's not the only thing that I use this for. I will talk about my comms in a bit. So that we're gonna hold off on that. But basically, just briefly going over my contacts. My contacts with the circles that Task Force 83 runs in, a lot of tag rounds are used. Tag rounds, Thunder Bees, which are for all intents and purposes distraction devices. They go bang, they are loud. Me personally, I would like to be able to hear at 8:30. So these are immensely helpful in terms of, protecting my hearing. They do have noise cancellation properties, so if something loud is going off next to you, it's not, your ear isn't going to hear it as loudly. So it does protect your ear in that sense. And in addition to that, there are audio enhancing qualities that allow me to hear things that I otherwise wouldn't be able to hear. So let's say, for example, I'm in the woods, and say, for example, I'm, prone, and I'm, maybe holding an area or sniping or conducting recon or whatever. So let's assume that someone is flanking behind me. Me personally, without these, my hearing it's okay, but with these on, I would certainly be able to hear that person sneaking up behind me. I'd go through, grab my sidearm, turn on him, take him down, and eliminate him. So, as for the other accoutrements that I have on this helmet, you'll see that I have a V-light on here. Now this, I mainly use during either night games or indoor games where a building might be dark. So if I end up going down and I end up getting eliminated, I just turn that on, and it kind of acts like a dead rat for all intents and purposes, except you can see this a lot better in a darker environment than you probably would be able to see someone with just a red, cloth over their head. So with this, it's just basically signaling, I'm eliminated, please don't shoot me, I don't like to get shot when I'm out. I don't think anyone does. Now, back here, you will see my counterweight pouch with my call sign patch on it. I will also go into those later on as well. My counterweight pouch kind of helps offset the weight to the front a little bit more. So it's a bit more balanced. You can even see it here. I don't have a whole lot of stuff on the front of my helmet, but me personally, if I am going to have a lot of weight on my helmet, I would rather have it towards the back. So that way it's kind of bringing it down a little bit, keeping my head a bit more upright. Now, inside of this counterweight pouch, I do have batteries in here, so that way, if for whatever reason I ever need AAAs, AAs, CR123s, or what have you, all I need to do is just take my helmet off, open this up, go through and grab what I need, and put it back together. This definitely helps if my headset decides to run out of batteries, then I've got them on hand, and I don't need to go back into the staging area or wherever I have to go to get extra batteries. All I need to do is just, open this up, place the batteries, toss the other ones, and I'm good to go. Now, camera right here is my Drift Innovation Ghost X camera. I believe this one is a 1080p camera. You guys will see me uploading videos here soon. Just this week or so, you guys have seen me upload the new Task Force 83 logo and animation, so you will be seeing videos from us here soon. But with this, it's not just for, recording videos making us look cool. For this, what I always like to do is I'll go through, I'll record a day of training or walk-ons or an event or whatever. And what I like to do personally is I like to go back and review that footage and, see where I messed up, see where I could have, done better when it comes to, say, a movement or a reload. I've went back and watched a lot of my footage and have seen where I could have done something better. So say, for example, I decided to reload in the open or something like that, when I could have gone through and went back into proper cover, reloaded, and got my gun back online and, kept getting after it. So this isn't just to, make cool videos and all that. And that is one thing I kind of suggest that a lot of people do, go back, look at your footage. If you're serious about this and you're serious about getting better, go back. I encourage you to go back and look at your footage and, see where you could have improved and try to apply that to the next time that you play. So, on top here, probably wondering what this is if you don't remember me saying it, but this is a Manta Strobe. Right now there's no battery in it, need to replace my CR123s, but this is mainly what I would use for a night game to kind of as a signal, basically. It wouldn't be on continuously. So if we need to, let someone know where we are, I would just flash this once and then be done with it. Or say, for example, if I was running night vision, which eventually I do plan on getting, I would switch it to its IR mode. It would vibrate, and if my teammates need to know where I am, I turn this on, they'll know where I am, and we basically use it as a signal and basically just a team identifier. It just makes things a lot easier under certain situations. So this up here up front is a replica L4G 24 mount. This is where you're going to see me mounting night vision, dummy or real or what have you. Right now I don't have my knives on it. I was running it this past weekend without any. But this, it is a replica, but it does hold up relatively well to some serious use. I would like to test it out with a real set of night vision potentially this year, but I guess we will be seeing what we can do. So, the inside of my helmet, I've often got a lot of questions just about how I set up my mask. Now, in here, I've actually cut out most of this Velcro, or not Velcro, padding. So I've cut this out, and then basically my mask fits in there. It fits perfectly. So if I were to go through, take this, and slide that in, perfect fit. This is pretty much the perfect mask and helmet setup. So if you are looking to do a legitimate helmet setup that is going to be reliable, that is going to be something that works well, look into a Di-4. Now, with that being said, let's move into my Di-4. Now, in my opinion, the Di-4 is pretty much the holy grail of masks. That's just me, at least for Milsim. Now, I did take off the ear protection because I'm running a headset. I've always ran a headset personally. So once you end up throwing that on, you no longer need it. That, and it allows you to hear better with them off. You can still hear it fine without it, but it's whatever. Now, typically, you guys are going to see me running a clear lens. Now, I run clear lenses because right now my optics are actually, my holographic and magnifier, which I'll touch on later, is tinted a little bit. So, for now, I'm pretty much strictly running the clear lens. Need to replace it. It has gotten scratched up over the years. I have put this mask through the ringer, and there are really no cracks in it. There's nothing really wrong with that outside of a few scratches, which on the field are relatively negligible anyway. Now, like I said, eventually, a lot of guys ask me, what mask should I wear if I'm going to be using, a weapon with optics on it? Personally, run a Di-4. Some guys say, oh, but you can't aim down sights that well with the Di-4. I beg to differ. Honestly, once you break it in, once you break a Di-4 in, you can look down sights as if there's nothing there. So, for me personally, and for a lot of the guys on the team, Di-4s are just mainly what we're typically using. Now, moving away from traditional paintball masks, I'm going to move into my secondary masks. This is my SA company skull mask, and yes, I use it to flex on people on the field and staging area. But this I typically keep on me to either keep me warm or cold. Now, some people might ask, oh, how do you keep cold in something that's, an extra layer? Well, when you start sweating, eventually that sweat is going to get cold, and that's just going to keep you cool. And, and obviously in the winter, it's cold. So having this extra layer is going to help. Now, you know, I'll typically wear this just around my neck. I don't usually wear it up around my face when I'm wearing my die for work, because sometimes it can fog up if that ends up, you know, happening. But under very specific circumstances, it rarely does. But this is something that I do suggest to guys, and if not this, then I suggest this. This is a schmog. You know, you guys have probably seen all sorts of guys running it. I think Wolf runs one. You've definitely seen the U.S. military run them. So this kind of serves the same purpose. So if you want, say for example, if you're somebody who doesn't want to run if you don't want to run a helmet, you can wrap this around your head and you have that extra level of head protection without having all of that extra weight. And then put your mask on around it. There you go. Good. But again, this basically serves the same purpose as the SA company mask. Eventually you're going to sweat's going to get cold, and then, you know, you're going to be able to stay cooler for it. Now, I don't typically use this that often unless it's either really hot or really cold. I don't usually use it that often, mainly just because to me it's just a lot easier to run the SA company mask. So I typically just stick with that and be done with it. But, however, if you are interested in this, it is a solid solution for what it can be used for. Now, that is my, you know, my head setup. My head setup is, I'm not necessarily going to say simple, but it works for us. And for Task Force 83 guys, the helmet with the headset is basically mandatory. So that's just something that all of us really have to get used to. We all think that it's a good setup. It wouldn't be on our SOP if it wasn't. So if you guys ever have any questions about my specific setup, you know, please don't hesitate to ask. I'm always happy to answer questions and everything. So moving on, we are going to move on to my lower body, which is going to encompass my plate carrier, combat shirt and pants, belts, things like that. And also, yes, my rifle. So, moving on. Let's go. Alright guys, so next up is going to be plate carrier and communications. Now, the way my plate carrier is set up, it's set up relatively simple. Let's stand up and so you guys can get a better shot of this. So, my plate carrier is set up relatively simple. You know, PTT, 3 mags up front. One would be right here, but I don't have one at the moment. Smoke or flashbang, whatever, what have you. So, I took a bit of inspiration from U.S. Army Special Operations Command guys, you know, Green Berets, Rangers. But I didn't want to basically set this up to be an exact replica of one of their JPCs. I wanted this to basically be my own freestyle build. So, you know, for me, it's just simple as hell. You know, for this, I really only need 3 mags up front. Personally, I don't subscribe to the, well, I used to, but nowadays, I don't typically subscribe to the idea of stacking mags out to your front. You know, I don't subscribe to that anymore, you know, because if I need to go prone, that's going to make things a real pain in the ass. So, just personally, stick with 3 mags up front, and you'll be fine. So, getting into the nuances and my thought process behind this plate carrier. You know, up here, you'll notice that it's got a little pen and a notepad. Now, I typically use that if I need to write something down, like a mission code or what have you, or something. Basically, just writing down, you know, objectives and stuff like that. So, because I'm liable to forget it if I don't. So that's why I usually keep that there. Now, my thought process behind this plate carrier setup in particular was that I needed something that can allow me to basically stay as light as possible while still being able to run everything that I need. You know, allow me to have my comms in a decent place, have a decent bit of magazines, allow me to still run smokes and everything else that I still need. and also while still allowing me to run hydration out of my ice blade here. And I will get to that in a minute. And the back panel, I basically went with this because it's just simply a lower profile. It's just a lower profile, you know, so I may as well be running it slick for all intents and purposes. So typically, you know, when we're going to an event and, you know, we have a few guys and we need to carry smokes or thunder bees or what have you, you know, I'll put 3 back here, 1 here, you know, and you know, this one is obviously for me, so if I need to get to it, I can get to it as fast as possible. So, but other than that, most of the time I don't want to have to take my gun out of the fight. So what I can do is I can just have a teammate come up behind me and I can say, hey, ask for 1.6 Orso, like, hey, Orso, we need a smoke. You know, so he'll come up to me, and if he doesn't have one on him, he'll come up to me, pull one out of here, and then, you know, toss it. Now, this is a bit more of a team-oriented build. Personally, I wouldn't really run one of these unless you have a team around you. You know, so if you do have a decent team around you and you guys have your developed SOPs and everything, then yeah, I'd say run one of these. These things are great. This one was only about $50. It was from Emerson Gear. You know, it's just an all-around really, really solid setup. You know, and if you can't afford this, then what I've seen a few guys do, from OMD to, you know, even actual Delta guys, what they'll go through and do is they'll actually, you know, molly on, you know, specific pouches that they might want to have. So if they want to put a flashbang pouch or 2 back here, they'll do so, and have a small hydration or comms or what have you. So a lot of guys will go through, from what I've been seeing recently, is that they won't typically run the traditional fixed back panel like one of these. They'll basically molly on whatever they want in particular, rather than, you know, running one of these, because these do kind of limit you in terms of what you can carry, but it is still a solid option for what it is. Now here you'll notice that I also have a couple of clips on my plate carrier, carabiner up front, this one on the side. Now there are times when I will hook a grenade into here, and that way if I need it, I'll just yank it down and then toss it, be done with it. Now, and this one is mainly just where I might mount my gloves if I don't feel like wearing them or whatever, or I might even mount some electrical tape here. But yeah, it's just an all-around simple setup. I'm running an Emerson taco pouch right here. I want to replace it with a real one at some point, have it be a bit more stable, but other than that, yeah, it works for what it is. You know, if I just need it there to reload out of as a primary reload source. Indexing is can be a pain with it occasionally, but, you know, once it's in there, it's not going anywhere. So, moving on to my actual comms. You can't really see it that well, and taking it out right now would be a pain in the ass. But this is a Baofeng UB5R in a Emerson radio pouch with an 18-inch antenna that I just had folded down. Now, this is kind of where a lot of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command influence kind of took place, with this in particular. But I didn't get it for looks, obviously. I got this, so with this, me and my team could have effective communication on the field without having to yell at each other or whatever. You know, having comm setups the way we have them set up, you know, with our headsets and our radios hooked up to a PGT here, it's invaluable, honestly. I see a lot of guys running around with those police radios on their shoulders, basically Midland radios, and I mainly just suggest running a headset, typically because if you're the type of team that's going to be behind enemy lines constantly, or God forbid, you're a sniper, if you're behind enemy lines and then, say for example, you for whatever reason forgot to turn the sound down on the thing, you're fucked for all intents and purposes. You really are. So for this, I just, got this, and this antenna, this 18-inch antenna, even folded, effectively doubles my range. So I've got more range, and it's going to be a hell of a lot more reliable than just running that typical, I think it's about a 5-inch or so, 4 to 5-inch antenna off of this thing. Now, it kind of is in the way a little bit. Some people have pointed that out. But again, I personally think that comes down to a training issue, so if you're the type of guy to switch shoulders on a regular basis, you can either reroute this to the back. I don't have a rerouting kit personally, but some guys I have seen, including Wyvern16 Storm, who runs Operational Detachment Delta, he has rewired his, and his is actually on his back around this area. So, and that is a solid solution. May end up looking into it myself. But when it comes to, plate carrier setups, for us, for the most part, if you see 6 behind somebody's call sign, that basically means that they are on one of the assault elements. Now, and when you're going to be on an assault element, you're going to be, assaulting. So you need a decent plate carrier to be able to carry basically everything you might need in the field, whether it be ammo, smokes, grenades, whatever. Also, in the back of here, my back panel also opens up. Now, some people, and this thing is, it's got a decent bit of space, but once you put the tank in, it ends up lessening the space a tad bit. But what I'm going to be doing there is I'm going to be getting a few more magazines, putting them back here, so that way when we end up getting into a situation where we have to refill on ammo, we're not having to sit there and walk back to the TOC or walk back to base or to the staging area or what have you. I'm going to have an entire other 3 mags here, another 2 towards the bottom. Eventually I'm going to be running 12 magazines on my person, and you're not even going to be able to notice it. For us, with the way that our plate carriers are set up, we're assault helmets. So we need to be able to be effective at doing just that. And you can't really do that if you're only running like 4 mags. So plate carrier setups are definitely something that you guys are going to want to look into, and look into some of the nuances as to how they're set up. And before we move on, I almost forgot to mention the core ice plates. This thing back here. This thing works wonders. It essentially works as another hydration source, except it's directly up against your body. Now what that does for you is that, say for example, you freeze this thing before you go to a game, and it happens to be 90 degrees out with humidity like it was this past weekend for us. You go through, you throw that on, you're going to be fine for a while, at least until you end up drinking the water once it ends up melting. But you're not going to have to deal with that for a while. Now personally, what I do suggest doing is, once that does melt, you can run through it pretty fast depending on how quickly you're drinking that water. So if you aren't going to be running a back panel setup like I'm running here, what you might honestly want to look into is an assault pack, and have that be the primary water source, but have the ice plate be a secondary water source that you're mainly just using to keep yourself cool. That's personally what I plan on doing here soon, if I can get myself a small enough assault pack. But yeah, that ice plate water source does end up running out relatively fast, so you might want to end up having that be a secondary, so that way you're not having to carry a crap load of water bottles on the field. So again, plate carrier setups are relatively simple if you know what you're doing. Really, all I can suggest when it comes to plate carrier setups is make sure your pouches are tied down. Make sure that everything you have, it looks uniform. It's in a place where you know for a fact that you can get it. Don't have your pouches be flopping around all over the place or anything like that. You don't look cool, when your mags are just flopping all out of your pouches and all of that. So, get something that works, like this Emerson JPC, or if you want to even spend a little bit more money, look into Ferro Concepts. But plate carrier setups, just look at how some guys in special operations set theirs up, and kind of figure out why you might want to do something similar. Now, when it comes to plate carriers, you definitely don't want to do anything just because it looks cool. With plate carriers, everything that you have on you absolutely needs to be functional. Because if it isn't, that's just extra weight that you do not need. So don't sit there and throw something on a plate carrier that you realistically know for a fact that you're not going to use. So next up is going to be the combat shirt and pants, and then we'll move into the more fun stuff, my guns obviously and all that. So let's move on and talk about that. So next up is going to be my combat shirt, combat pants. Some of our guys, went and balled out and, got the more expensive stuff. Some of them have Cry. Some of them are running 511. Me personally, right now, I'm just running just an Emerson multicam combat shirt and pants. For what they are, for the price, they are very, very solid. I probably only paid about $100 for both of these, but other than that, they are solid for what they are. Now, in terms of the knee pads in these, I do suggest changing them out for the real Cry knee pads, just so that way, they don't fall out. You don't have to deal with that every 10 minutes while on the field, because that just becomes a pain in the ass very quickly. But I did mention our call sign patches earlier. With the way these work, the way we have these typically set up, the way I suggest our guys run them, is one on the left and right shoulder respectively, so that way, we always know who is who, no matter what angle we're looking at them from. So, with our call sign patches, it's not just, for looks, it's not just, to add to the immersion, it's mainly for, number one, obviously identification in crazy situations, and number two, when you get hailed on the radio, your call sign is what you're getting hailed by. We've found that in some events where we've had some events where enemy teams have ended up getting a hold of our frequencies. So, and if we end up using code names, they know exactly who you are. Now, outside of the team, yeah, sure, guys probably know me as Ghost16 Reaper, that's a given. But for most of my guys, you're not going to know exactly who Ghost36 is or Ghost26. You're not going to know that. You're likely not going to know who Astro16 is. And even still, outside of the team, you're not really going to know exactly what those call signs mean. So, for us, it keeps things simple for us. It's just a solid way of identifying each other. And so far, during events and larger Milsim events, it's worked extremely well for us. But for these, for the combat shirt and pants, typically you'll see Task Force 83 guys either running in multicam or woodland. We mainly picked those two camos simply because it's just easier to run those, honestly. Most events and most environments you're going to be going into, typically woodland and multicam are going to be what works the best. So we typically just stuck with those, and we just kept it at that. It's simple. If we may end up, allowing other camos in the future, like AOR1, Tiger Stripe, AOR2, things like that. but it might be a bit before we end up deciding to do that. For now, we want to, you know, get all of our guys on the same page when it comes to the uniform standard and all of that. So I'm not going to harp on combat shirts and pants for too long. You know, it's not much to talk about. I mean, they're solid. Personally, I feel that if you're going to be in a Milsim team, you probably should have them. But either way, I'm not really going to stay on that topic for too long. So next up is going to be guns. Lots of guns. Alright, so this is likely what you clicked on this video for. So next up we have my TMC. Now, right now, this is usually the configuration that you guys see it in, along with the suppressor. You know, holographic magnifier, soft mod stock, Mark 18 handguard, you know, flashlight pack. This is typically the configuration you guys see it in. Now, to get into the specifics of this setup in particular, let's get closer here. This obviously was built off of, it's based on, you know, what you're going to see, you know, typical U.S. Special Operations using, from SEALs to Rangers to Green Berets, you know. Now, I'm not going to lie, initially I did put together this setup because I thought it looked nice. It looks badass. But this setup, in my opinion, just the basis of this setup, not even necessarily the handguard or, you know, how I've got the front end set up, but just the basis of this. So this is technically a 10.3 barrel. The standard barrel that I usually run is a 10.5. But in my opinion, this is basically the holy grail of setting up a paintball gun, in my opinion. So, setting this thing up, you know, when you're thinking about setting up a rifle, what do you need? Obviously, you need range, you need maneuverability, you know, you need it to be comfortable. So, for this setup, for me, range-wise and, you know, maneuverability, personally, I think you get the best of both worlds out of a 10.3 to 10.5 barrel. Now, typically, I don't go, at least if I'm, you know, typically just doing your basic bitch assaulter stuff, I don't usually want to go anywhere past 12 inches. So, you know, you're not really going to be seeing me run like a 16-inch barrel, you know, and doing assaulter stuff. It's just not going to happen. I tried that once. It didn't go well. It got front heavy very quickly. But for this setup, you know, look, it's compact. You know, it's a compact setup that is extremely comfortable, maneuverable. So I see a lot of guys in the community talking about, you know, what they need for CQB. You know, I've seen a lot of guys go through and they'll put together setups that are maybe half this thing's size for CQB. Now, I'm not going to claim to be a CAG operator or anything like that, but for me, having done real CQB, and I don't mean just going to a field and the bunkers are close, I mean back at Asylum, we would have to go through and clear entire buildings room to room. Now, having done that, having gone in a real CQB environment, this is honestly the perfect setup to do it, with or without a suppressor. You know, like, because you gotta remember, you're not strictly going to be in that building. You're not always going to be in that CQB environment. So my thought process when it comes to, you know, CQB and just my typical engagement ranges in general is that, you know, if I'm going to go into a CQB environment, I'm still going to want to have this. But if I'm going into an engagement outside where there's going to be, you know, some level of range, flip up the magnifier and engage. You know, this setup here, in my honest opinion, is what you know, that this is just the holy grail of rifle setups, just typical SBR length setups. It works well in CQB, it works well outside. So for me, personally, I want that stability to where if I do have to engage at a range, I still have that opportunity to do so. Rather than, you know, having a setup that's maybe half this size and I'm basically holding the thing like this. I don't have a whole lot of stability doing this at all. But if I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna need long range, I'm gonna use this. You know, I'm going to use this setup where I've got my fore end set up the way I want to, and I've got that stability that I need to have. So, going into the nuances of this setup, to start off, you know, suppressor and the handguard, as well as the pistol grip here, all have been done by MagFed Maker. A massive thank you to him. I wouldn't have been able to do any of the setups that I have right now without him. You know, he's done my 416, he's done all of my suppressors, did the gunfighter barrel when I had that, and also did the setup that I'm using currently on the Black Powder Red Earth build. So, massive shout out to him. But, you know, this foregrip, Magpul, MOE foregrip, extremely comfortable. In my opinion, it's the perfect length. You know, it's great. This PEC 15 was, I believe it's an Element, I have no idea. I need to check again. But either way, Element PEC 15, got this from Vince Branch. Also, massive shout out to him as well. Now some guys might ask, oh, what do you need a PEC 15 for? Well, if I'm, you know, in a real CQB environment, like we were back at Asylum, I'm going to be able to use this for either the laser or the visible light. Or say, for example, if I decide to get night vision, I flip it to IR, and I now have an IR illuminator and laser. Even though this thing is a replica, it still functions like an actual PEC 15. Now, the flashlight, this is just a cheap flashlight, I think from Trinity Tactical, I believe. It's decent for what it is. I don't use it for anything other than just seeing where I'm going in darker areas. So, yeah, that's really about it. Now, right now, I am also running T15 magazines in this thing. Now, I needed to have first strike capability. Nowadays, you cannot go to a MagFed only game without getting shot at by first strikes. It's just not going to happen. Even at mixed events, you're probably going to be getting shot at by a dude with first strikes at some point. So me personally, I needed this capability, and my friend, you know, was able to go through and do this mod for me. Also, big shout out to him. Can't tell you who he is because he doesn't want to do it for anybody else, but massive shout out to him for this. But for this, you know, the T15 magazines, you know, they work extremely well out of a TMC. You know, these drop out just like a regular TMC magazine would. And now that I've actually have the capability, you know, I now can actually, you know, put up a fair fight against some of these other guys that are pretty much almost exclusively shooting FSR. Now, with that being said, I had to also switch out barrels. Now for the Black Powder Red Earth build, I have a hammerhead barrel. That one is in 12 inches. Now this one that I'm running now is a 10-inch barrel. But with the way the barrels work in a TMC, once you screw it in, you're technically losing about 1.5 inches. So, went through, screwed on my muzzle, and now this is technically a 10-3, which is actually what the correct length is for a Mark 18 build, which is awesome for me because obviously I'm a stickler for realism when it comes to my setups. So, stock-wise, this is just your basic M4 soft mod stock. Extremely comfortable. This thing is probably the holy grail of stocks in my opinion. Is easily the most comfortable one that I have, next to maybe my UBR. But if you're looking for a solid stock, look into these. You know, you'll get a decent cheek weld with it. It won't really get in the way of anything. It's just an all-around great stock. Feels great in the shoulder as well. So, optics-wise, you guys always see me running this set of optics, you know, the holographic and magnifier. Now, with occasionally I will go through and switch it out for either a Spectre DR, low power variable zoom scope, or micro red dots. So, but typically this here is my bread and butter. This setup to me is just perfect. You know, there's not really much that goes into using a setup like this. You need to go into a building, or you know, you're typically operating when the bunkers are close. Okay, flip the magnifier down, and you're good to go. You know, you're engaging at typical FSR range, and you know, you need to reach out and touch someone. Flip it up, and you're good to go. Now, the beautiful thing that I love about running this holographic is the little donut reticle. For the most part, so long as you're, you know, engaging within your usual engagement distances, once you put this donut on someone and pull the trigger, they're gone. They're done, period. Especially if you have this thing zero. Once you zero your weapon properly, you zero your gun properly, and then you're good. You're good at that point. So zero your optics, put that donut on someone, pull the trigger, and they're eliminated probably within the first 1 to 2 shots. So the Mark 18 setup it's perfect in my opinion. I push a lot of the guys in the team to run setups similar to this. Maybe not this exact setup, but I typically push them to run things that are about 12 to 11 inch barrels for our assault teams. Obviously, guys who are running DMRs and sniper rifles are obviously going to want to run longer setups, but for the most part, I do suggest that my guys run these, and because we've just had great success with setups of this length. Because personally, I feel like, honestly, if you go any longer as just a regular assaulter, then you're probably doing yourself a disservice, because that setup is likely going to end up being extremely front heavy after a while. And after about your first hour or two, you're not going to want to lug that thing around all day, and you're probably going to switch back to a lighter barrel anyway. So that's the Mark 18. You guys have seen it. I'm pretty sure all of you like it. I hope so, at least. So next up is the TPM1. Still a relatively new pistol. It's based off at least functions similar to a Glock 17. All of the, you know, things that you actually need are in the right place. You know, your slide release, your mag release, all that. Even fits in a Glock 17 holster. I will get into that a little bit later with my belt setup. So currently, right now, I don't have much on it. I do plan on getting some work done to it. There will be work getting done to it here soon after the event on the 20th. But currently, and I can't really tell you anything about it either, but right now, I just have a Surefire X300U flashlight on here. This is a replica, it's not a real one. But personally, I'm beginning to think that 43 cal pistols are the future in MagFed. You know, with these, the range is solid for what they are. You know, for what these things are, the range is great. They are definitely accurate as well. Now, you see a lot of guys running pistols in the community, typically 68s. I did run a 68 at some point. I ran a Tip-X back in the day. Personally, I just feel like 68 caliber pistols are probably going to be phased out within the next few years, especially if fields start getting on board with 43 caliber pistols. Now, the reason I say that is because with these, they're not as bulky, you know, and they feel more realistic. They're a lot easier to maneuver with. They're just, all in all, more comfortable pistols to run. But yet you run a Tip-X, and it's about the size of a Desert Eagle. It's unwieldy. There aren't a whole lot of holsters out there for it. So, And think of it this way. I'm sure everybody's gone to an event where they see a guy pull out a pistol at a range that they likely don't need one at. Why do that? Personally, I don't subscribe to that. Personally, if I'm going to pull out a pistol, it's because there's a target danger close, and then I'm likely about to get shot out. So then I'm going to pull out a pistol. I'm not going to pull out a pistol for, some guy at a range. At that point, I'm going to go through, duck back into cover, reload my primary, and get that back online. I'm not going to switch to a pistol if I don't need to. To me, it doesn't make sense. And a lot of guys you also see running the FSC. Solid pistol, don't get me wrong, but for me personally, and a few other guys on the team, me personally think that shooting first strikes out of a pistol is expensive. Like, shooting first strikes in general is expensive as it is. So what do you need to shoot them out of a pistol for? Because if you're in a situation where you have to pull out a pistol, you're likely not at FSR range. And if you are, you probably should have just ducked back into cover and reloaded your primary in the first place. So for me, running a pistol in 68 doesn't really resonate with me. I would just prefer to have this and pay less for 43 ammo. I'm not using it that often anyway. It's not like I'm pulling it out every 5 minutes. So I would rather have this and have this be as reliable as it is at the ranges that I need it to be reliable at, rather than, pull out something like a Tip-X or a T8.1 and have that be as massive and unwieldy as they are. So these, I personally suggest, in my opinion, 43 caliber pistols are the future, and if your field allows you to use them, I would do so. I would run them if I were you. They are solid pistols and very reliable. The only way that these things are going to break is if you force it to, honestly. So 43 cal pistols, definitely look into those. So gun setup wise, don't put stuff on your gun that you don't need. If you've got, say, like, you got extra lasers or foregrips running around or whatever, don't put them on there strictly because you have them. I've seen a lot of guys in the community put together setups that just have a lot of stuff strapped to them that are relatively unnecessary and serve no real purpose. So if you are going to put up a setup, if you are going to put together a gun setup, make sure that it makes sense. Make sure that, for what you're using it for, have it be comfortable. Nobody can tell you how to put together a gun setup, because that is your setup. It's a highly personal thing, in my opinion at least. And, what works for me might not work for someone else. But get the basics down. You're going to want a decent handguard. You're going to want a solid barrel for what you're doing. Solid optics that aren't going to break. And then once you have all of the basics down, if you feel like you need a PEC 15 or a flashlight or a different stock pistol grip or whatever, or what have you, go for it. But if you don't feel that you need it, don't run it. Suppressors even, personally I try to stay away from metal suppressors because that's just more weight down the line. But these suppressors from Magfitmaker are 3D printed. They weigh virtually nothing. So I typically keep them on there for looks, and they weigh basically nothing anyway, so it's not really weighing me down or anything like that. So again, if you are going to set up a gun setup, make sure that it's stuff that you actually need. Don't throw stuff on just because you have it. That's never worked out well for anyone. Alright, so next up, we are going to move down to to cover my belt setup. Belt setup is, right now it's simple. It's not really anything it's not uber expensive, and it's not, loaded down with stuff I don't need. So let's get into that. So next up is my belt setup. It's just a TMC MRB. This thing is about $50 or so. It's a cheap belt, but it's solid. It works on an inner and outer belt system, and this is obviously the outer belt. The inner belt is nothing but Velcro, and that's actually what's holding your pants up. I'm not wearing it right now, but it is tight enough to be on there. But this is a solid belt setup. I haven't really got a chance to play with it much yet, but this past weekend it has been very solid, and it held up well. Now, going into what I have on this belt is a TMC 6354 DO replica for the TPM1. So it's not coming out unless I want it to. So that's it's a really solid holster. If you end up getting a TPM1 with an X300U, get one of these. It's probably the best holster on the market, plus it's red dot compatible. Next up is, this is just a no brand pouch that I have. This is where I typically keep my 12 gram CO2s, the Allen key for my pistol. It's mostly just going to be miscellaneous stuff. It's never really going to, hold my phone or anything like that. Now right here, I have the T-Rex Arms dump pouch. This is probably the best dump pouch I have ever used. Mainly due to the fact that you can basically clip it to the front of your leg, and then once, while you're running and everything like that, it's not flopping up and down like your traditional dump pouches would. So it's not moving anywhere, it's staying in place. You can hold your mags, water, whatever, or what have you, and it's just an all-around great setup. Here I have another Emerson taco pouch, like earlier, for my plate carrier for emergency reloads. So that way, if I run out of ammo, I can just, reload from that source, and it's probably the fastest reload source that I have. Now this is another pistol mag pouch. I'm going to be getting another one here, but this one is from Blue Force Gear. Got this one for about $10 or so. My mags fit perfectly in there, and there's really no issues. So this is my belt setup, and it's a solid setup. So, when putting together a belt, again, like always, like a plate carrier, do not load yourself down. Don't carry stuff that you don't need. Carry your essentials. Carry your, your CO2, your Allen keys, your magazines, and your pistol. And that's it. You don't really need anything else unless you want to throw, grenades on your belt or whatever. But other than that, you don't really need much for this. So, that's the belt setup. And we are about done. That covers basically everything. So, moving on to the outro. So, my final thoughts on, putting together gear, and, my final words to every one of you guys. So, that has been my entire loadout. I'm not going to drag on the final words for too long. This video has been long enough. But basically, really all I can say is make sure your kit works for you. All of it. Every single bit of it. Your belt, plate carrier, helmet, all of it. Make sure that it works for you. Make sure that it works for the role that you're operating in. Don't have it to where, you're set up for a role that you don't need to be following. So, if you're going to put stuff on your plate carrier for looks, or not your plate carrier, or on your kit for looks, like I said, make sure that it's not going to weigh you down. That's not to say don't have things on your gear for looks. Everyone does. But, make sure that it's just something as small as a tomahawk. But don't go through and start putting, dual comms on your setup or whatever, or things like that, if you're not going to use them. There's no point in doing so. So, when it comes to building a loadout, and especially if you're, building a loadout for an entire team, and you're kind of, developing SOPs for a team, make sure that your loadouts, fulfill the role that you want to fill on the field as a team. For us, Task Force 83, for the most part, it's assaulters. So for us, that's what we're doing. And our recon element guys have a different kit. Our recon element dudes are carrying, chest rigs. Their gear is set up differently than the assault teams. So, having gear setups that are varied is definitely a good thing, within your team, so long as they're fulfilling certain roles on the field. But with that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something today, and I will catch you guys in the next one.